Okay, so I think we'll start. So good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our online tasting for Château Lynch-Bages. I'm joined this evening by Jean-Charles Cazes, who is the owner and basically in charge of running the chateau. Thank you for joining us, Jean-Charles.
Hi, Lynne.
Before we start, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping rules. They're going to be posted in the chat, so you can check them as we go. But if you select speaker mode, you'll be able to get the best view of myself and Jean-Charles as we go through the conversation this evening. We will be recording the event, but we're only recording the host, which is myself and Jean-Charles. So please feel free to leave your video on because it's quite lonely if you don't. So we're very happy if you can leave your video on. Please remember to eat and drink throughout the tasting. We are going to close off at 10 to 8 because Jean-Charles is actually heading into a dinner in Germany. He's actually traveling and working at the moment, even though he's got the beautiful winery in Pauillac behind him. He's actually in Germany, so we'll be closing a little bit early. And just to say that for the best question, in the first half of the tasting this evening, we have a bottle of the GM Cast Pauillac to give away for the best question that we get in the first half of the evening. So without further ado, Jean-Charles, thank you very much for joining us from Germany. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. As we were saying earlier, this is not your first rodeo. We've done this tasting online before, so I think we'll just crack into it, shall we?
Sure.
This is third in our series. We had Château de Fisal in January, Château Kerwan in February, and obviously yourself now in March. And it's been our Irish Wine Geese series, purposely choosing to invite Bordeaux Chateau with an Irish connection. So maybe you could start by giving us the background to the chateau and
Sure.
the Irish history to
Of course, of course. I
property.
mean, you'll notice my accent betrays me, and I can't claim any Irish roots myself. But the name is linked to Ireland for quite some time. The Lynch family established in Bordeaux in the 18th century, and I think it was John Lynch who inherited the estate through a wedding. He married Mrs. Drouillard, the daughter of a French merchant in around 1849 or something like that, and he became the owner of the Domaine de Bages, which had started to have a reputation. The estate is in the central part of Pauillac, with two main parcels, which is one named after the location Bages, and another one which is right across the street called Montferrand. And the Lynch established here 1749 and stayed for 75 years. So Michel Lynch, the son of John, was mayor of Pauillac during the French Revolution, and Jean-Baptiste Lynch, which is also from the family, became mayor of Bordeaux in the early 19th century. So the Lynch had a very strong name and reputation. Mr. Michel Lynch was known for being a foremost viticulturist. There are some mention of his experiments in the archive of Château Lafite, which mentioned that Mr. Lynch was experimenting some new techniques like destemming the grapes. So he left a name attached to the Domaine de Bages that stick for pretty much all the following years, except for a Swiss merchant at the time of the 1855 classification, except for the Swiss merchant who changed the name of the estate to his own, which was Jurin Bages, for I think about 5 years. The estate has always been known since the Lynch as Lynch-Bages.
Okay.
And when my great-grandfather took over the estate the 1930s. He never thought of changing the name to a Cazes, which would have been would not have worked as well as Lynch-Bages, I have to say.
Yeah. And I mean, the name of the wines are, exceptional quality, but the name is renowned. The chateau name is renowned across the globe, really,
the
isn't it?
name is what,
Change.
yes, renowned. The Lynch have traveled around the world, and you find Lynch in all continents, and it's a very, very Irish name, but the Lynch who left from Galway established strong relations in Europe. Some emigrated to South America. You may or may not know, but Che Guevara is from the Lynch lineage as well. It's
Really?
his name is Ernesto Guevara Lynch. He's got some Irish blood, which explains, many things, I'm sure.
Explains
Yeah.
anything.
And reminds me of a story. I was at the tasting in London some years back, and someone got to my booth, and I think he was a bit tipsy, but very, very frank and honest. And he said, "You know why your wine is so popular in this country?" And I tried to find a few reasons, including, the quality of our wines, the promotion we do all year long, etc. He wouldn't listen to anything I said. He said, no, it's simply because it's easy to pronounce. So whether you call it Lynch or Lynch doesn't matter to me. Both pronunciations are accepted, but I have to say that Mr. Lynch himself, after being knighted by the French king under the Restauration, insisted for his name to be pronounced à la française. So
Okay.
I say Lynch-Bages more than I say Lynch-Bages.
Château Lynch-Bages, okay. So that's interesting. Listen, we can make a start on tasting the wines. So both 2020, we have the Echo,
Right.
which is the second wine, obviously, and then we have the Lynch-Bages 2020. So I've already poured mine here. So while we chat, people can pour the wine and smell and taste. And remember that we have a nice bottle to give away for any questions that come in the first half of the tasting. In terms of you, you've been really involved? When did you come back to running the family business, Jean-Charles? When did you turn to
I came back. I joined the family business in 2002. Prior to that, I spent a couple of years in Brazil. I worked for a French company in the automobile industry, and I enjoyed Brazil very much, but the automobile industry is not quite as much fun as the wine industry, so it was a hard decision to come back. And after a couple of years working in our distribution company, and learning the trade, I took over my father's role as CEO of the company in 2007. So I've been in charge of Lynch-Bages and all our family estates since 2007.
And in terms of the new winery, which is behind you, and was basically the 2020 was the first vintage from the new winery.
Right.
We were just chatting about that earlier. I mean, what was the motivation to build this new winery, this incredible facility? Really beautiful winery.
Well, in the history of Lynch-Bages, there has been really three phases. Lynch-Bages, you see on the background, you see next to the new building, you see a big red door, and that's the old winery, which was built in the 1860s. And from the 1860s until 1975, we used that facility, we used that winery to produce wine. And it's important to understand that for many, many years, we hadn't seen any investment at Lynch-Bages for a simple reason: there was no money. The heyday of the vineyards in Bordeaux, where the first part of the 19th century up to the 1855 classification. And then after, we went from one crisis to another. We first saw the appearance of mildew in the middle of the century. Then after came phylloxera, that pretty much wiped out all the vineyards in France and Europe over 30 years. And when we started to understand how to fight phylloxera and using American rootstock and to replant the vineyards, you know, we entered into the 20th century with a war. Then after the Great Depression, then the Second War. So there was no mean to invest, and we used that old cellar for over a century. My father arrived in 1973. The situation was not very glamorous neither. With the oil shock, you know, the interest rate went up 25%. We were literally broke. But he managed to sell a bit of wine, and over 15 years, he revamped some of the existing building and added some steel and stainless steel tanks to have a more modern facility that helped us to produce better wines. And that took him about 15 years, up to 1989, with the celebration of the Fête de la Flore at Lynch-Bages. We finalized pretty much the renovation of Lynch-Bages, and we got Lynch-Bages from basically from the 19th century into the 20th century with this renovation. But the model of our winery was based on the 1970s knowledge of enology. It worked well, but today it was not adapted to the way we work anymore. So when I arrived in 2006-07, with the technical director, Nicolas Labenne, we worked on remapping the vineyards, redefining the plots. We used to have 80, 90 plots at Lynch-Bages that we subdivided sometimes into 3 different plots. So we increased the number of parcels with smaller units, and with a better understanding of our vineyards and a better way to harvest grapes of homogeneous quality, we needed a new winery because it doesn't. If you can't bring all the precision you put in the vineyard all the way to the blending process with a new winery, smaller fermenting units, you're losing pretty much all the hard work that you've put in the vineyard. So in 2009. We decided to work on this project. I contacted Didi Pay, the architect, who had been a friend of my father for many years. Didi unfortunately passed away about a year ago. He was a friend of my father. He had met him while he was working on his father's project in Paris. He was the resident architect for Le Louvre and the famous pyramid. And he was a Francophile, could speak perfect French without any accent. Actually, he met his wife while working in Paris. So he married a French lady. And most importantly, he was a wine lover. He was really into wines. He had been a long-standing member of the Commandery de Bordeaux in New York. And wine was his passion. So he was very motivated to work on a project like this one. So in 2009, we contacted him, and we started to exchange on some ideas. We went abroad visiting wineries in different countries, many wineries in Spain, where there had been a new wave of investment in the last 20 years, in Bordeaux, of course, but also in Napa and other wine regions. And we gathered some ideas, and we came back with a 120-page program that we gave to Didi and said, this is it, this is what we need. with all the technical requirements, space distribution, all this. And he came with the idea of the box, which is what you see behind us. Some might say it's doesn't look like a winery, but there's no look of a winery. You know, a winery is is a factory. It has to be, the purpose has to be efficiency. And we kept the old parts that you can see on the picture behind me, and the buildings that actually is a symbol of the estate that you see on the label. But everything behind has been designed with the idea that it has to be functional. It's very functionalist, and this building has a very low, helps us to be more super efficient in terms of water consumptions, of electricity, energy savings, etc. And it's very important, and it's also inside, you know, for the process. It's every detail has been carefully thought, so it helps us to make a best possible wine.
I think it's interesting. I remember you were saying that obviously it's bright, it's light, people can see the vineyards outside if they're working in the winery. And I think, you know, you made the point that you don't need to be working in a dark
No, exactly.
shed.
That was
because they're in a nice environment and the workers have got somewhere nice to make the wine.
Sure. We worked on three main principles for this winery. First was to have a very large crush pad, because that area is where you'll see more innovation in the coming years from different machines, destemming machines, sorting machines, all kind of things. And so we have a very large crush pad. Also because we have 100 hectares, so we have a large vineyard. So when we need to harvest fast, we can't have any bottlenecks. So that crush pad was the first step, and very important idea. This is also where we do the bottling. So we have a bottling line that gets into that space during the month of June. So it's a very important and crucial space. Also, second important feature of this winery is the number of tanks. We used to have 40 tanks. Now we have 80 tanks. And we feed those tanks using gravity. There's no pumping. And the maceration process is also done with using gravity and with minimal pumping. We use tank elevators. So that helps us to be very gentle on the fruit, and to avoid crushing the seeds with pumpings, and then to have finer tannins. And then there is the barrel room, which is underneath. We bring the wine into the barrels using gravity again. And we have large barrel room that accommodate for 2 harvests. So we don't have to bring some wine back into tank to make space for the next vintage, which helps us to really fine tune on the aging dates. And
you're making sorry, Jean-Charles, are you making 80 different plots, is it? You're
we have about 200 small plots, but and we have 80 tanks. So there is already some blending decisions which are made during harvest to regroup some plots. But that's fine. We can work with that. But when we used to have 40 tanks and very large capacity tanks, you lose a lot of definition. So now it's that number of 80 tanks is just ideal in terms of size distribution of tanks, number of tanks, because we can't have 150 tanks. It would be inefficient, and we have to have you know, the resources to work on those tanks. So this is the good number for us, and that helps us to bring all the precision that we have in the vineyard all year long and during harvest, all the way to the blending decision, which is made in December, January, where we have all those lots to play with for deciding our blends. Yeah.
Recipe for the wine.
Right.
So Helen has asked, is there anything from the traditional process that is not used today which you subconsciously find yourself missing? Anything from the old winery that you miss?
No, actually, the old winery, I mean, there's nothing from the previous winery that we miss.
Okay.
But we came back to the original process of the 19th century winery with the red door that you see here. Actually, that winery
Your
is
left.
Yeah, on my left. That winery was designed by an engineer called Skavinsky in 1864, and back in those days there was no electricity in a winery, so the only way they couldn't use pumps, and the only way to bring the grapes into the tanks was using gravity. So that model spread out in Bordeaux, and was known as the standard Bordeaux cellar, or the Skavinsky cellar, and that was in use at Lynch-Bages, as I said, until 1975, with some minor adaptations. But the principle was using gravity. And as you know, electricity made its way into the cellars, people started using pumps, renovating their cellars, and lots of those Skavinsky cellars disappeared or were adapted. And we came back to the original Skavinsky design with our new facility, but it's like a copy and paste of the old methods, but with new technology. So in fact, we closing the loop, going back to what was the winemaking at Lynch-Bages for over 100 years, but 50 years ago.
Back to the future.
Yeah, back to the future.
And thanks for that question, Helen. So am I right in thinking that that's the winery that you could visit still, is the tanks and everything?
Yeah. You can, when you come to
visit the old
Lynch-Bages,
winery.
and we give you a tour, you'll see, you'll enter through the building, and the reception area will show you the crush pad, will show you the tank rooms, the vat rooms, and the old winery as well, which communicates to the new winery, with a very large glass door, which is quite spectacular. So you can see both techniques and both era when you come to visit us, and I hope many of you will come to see Lynch-Bages. It's
worth
a visit. Yeah.
So then let's talk about Echo then, shall we? So it's 20 Echo. So it's a Cabernet and Merlot. And I think I've already shown you the bottle. People have got the bottle in front of them, but obviously this is the Echo. So it's always good to be able to talk about you know, flavors and aromas. When we get the actual winemaker, we like to know what you feel in terms of flavors and aromas of the 2020 Echo.
Well, I will talk by memory. I don't have a glass of wine with me here. I've been drinking beer mostly in the last couple of days.
Germany.
Germany. I'm in Germany, by the way, if it hasn't been said before. But the Echo 2020, as far as I remember, is 70-some% Cabernet Sauvignon, and almost 30% Merlot. And this is quite rare that we have more Cabernet Sauvignon on the Echo than we have on the Grand Vin. that year, 2020, the Grand Vin, Lynch-Bages, has 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, so less than Echo, 30% Merlot, and the rest is Cab Franc and Petit Verdot. Usually the idea of the second wine is to be ready sooner than the Grand Vin for drinking. However, I think, you know, both wines, if you have them next to each other, you'll see both wines are quite open right now. The Echo, of course, has a little bit less structure than Lynch-Bages. It's a slightly lighter, even though it's 70% Cabernet Sauvignon wine, so it's not still full-bodied and a wine that has some shoulders, but it's a wine that is quite enjoyable right now. So is the Grand Vin, also with a large proportion of Merlot to give it some roundness and some fruit flavors as well.
And given the time of year, we actually suggested that this would be nice with, what did we suggest actually for the food matches on the Echo? I'm just trying to think. Oh yes, we were
rack of lamb.
Exactly.
You're never wrong with a rack of lamb.
No, exactly. And the reason that we kind of suggested that, and we got some suggestions from yourselves, but when we came to visit you with our managers, we had roast lamb over the fire. So I was thinking that was very nice.
That's a classic combination.
Exactly.
You're very you never miss the point when you do that.
Exactly. So listen, I've got a couple of questions. How could the 1855 classification possibly make such a big mistake in the case of Lynch-Bages?
Oh, you tell me. I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, the classification was done on one criteria only, and it's always important to remember that the criteria to rank all the wines was the price of each wine. The price reflected all the information on the estate and its fame and the demand for the wine. But he didn't take into account the potential of the terroir and other very important criteria. So I guess Lynch-Bages was not in its best form when the jury came and looked at at its positioning. The price were not actually great, I would guess. But the market has corrected it over the years, and today, if we had to redo the classification, the outcome would be very different. There is also one historical reason that I've heard a couple of times, is the loyalty of Jean-Baptiste Lynch to the monarchy. As you may see on the bottle of Lynch-Bages, there is a fleur de lis, which has remained on the label for forever. Even though my great grandfather wasn't really a royalist, he kept the symbol on the label. And Jean-Baptiste Lynch welcomed the troops of the king in 1814 after the defeat of Napoleon, and opened the doors of the city of Bordeaux. So some have commented that during the Second Empire, in 1855, Napoleon III wasn't so happy about that, and that it was in a way some retaliation for his past loyalty to the king. Interesting.
But as you say, it's been corrected. The prices have certainly been corrected.
The price has been corrected. It's always, supply and demand, and today we would be ranked amongst the second gross.
Yeah, definitely. Vincent has asked, fine wine prices have en primeur come down a lot this year. Do you see this trend continuing, and how will you deal with the potential US tariffs?
There's two questions in one.
Two questions. One is en primeur pricing,
En
which
primeur pricing, en primeur, the en primeur system has been key for the success of our distribution for many, many years. The difference between Bordeaux and other regions is that there is volatility in the prices in Bordeaux. If you look at Burgundy, for instance, where the producer control their distribution and go through national importers, they only know one way, it's up. The price go up, and they try to stay in touch with the market condition this way. We in Bordeaux adapt every year to changing situation, and sometimes the price goes up, sometimes the price goes down. The last year condition were not as good as for the 2022 vintage, and so there has been an adjustment on price last year. This year, I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't feel that the signals are quite positive coming from all the different markets. As you mentioned, in the US, there is a threat of a huge tariff that would be a disaster for our exports. There is good demand in the Far East, but all markets are not as good as they were just after COVID, for instance, or before COVID for China. So it's hard to say the direction, the exact direction for the next en primeur campaign. But it's always important to remember that Bordeaux adjusts its pricing to market condition, and that most of the chateaux rely heavily on the en primeur system, and people need to sell their wines, so they will do what's necessary to sell their wines every year. And that's an opportunity for consumers who follow the en primeur system to purchase their wines at the best condition every year.
absolutely.
And coming back on the second part of the question about the US, it's very simple. If there is a tariff on wine imports, there will be a decrease in demand for sure. If the tariff is like it was in the first Trump mandate, I think it was around 20-25%. We know where it will go. There will be much less trade, but still some trade. But if there is 100% or 200% tariff on our wines, it's game over. We won't be able to sell a bottle anymore in the US, and for as long as it will last, if it's implemented.
Okay, let's encourage people to go on to the 2020 Château Lynch-Bages. We were discussing earlier that this is the first vintage from the new winery, and the old winery is there, but then with the outline of the new winery behind on the label, the celebration label for that vintage, isn't it?
Yes, that's a one-off label that we wanted to celebrate the new winery. It's a very subtle twist on the historical label of Lynch-Bages, with, as you said, the shadow of the new building behind the old one, and also the vintage is handwritten by the architect, by Didi. So it's
Handwritten in the
small detail, but that's
hand corner.
That's a fun detail.
Nice. So I'm going to go to another question. Is there a reason why the American vines were resistant to mildew and phylloxera?
I'm not so sure about mildew, but the American about phylloxera. The American rootstock. Well, the phylloxera was actually imported from the US. We imported the problem from the US, and later on we imported the solution from the US by using the rootstock, which were resistant to mildew, and that's we find out in the later part of the 19th century that by crafting our vines on American rootstock, we would be safe and not have any phylloxera problems. So that's
and it's still, I mean, it's still the case today that
it's still the case today. Yeah, we have to
yeah.
craft. We can't. Nobody's planting what we call front de pied straight with the with our vines. We have to craft on American rootstock.
Okay. Then the next question is, Alan asked, hello, can I ask, have the weight of the bottles reduced? The echo appears lighter, and any moves to alternative to cork?
Good question. Yes, we have a lighter bottle on Echo. On Lynch-Bages, we have a bottle which is a bottle that has been specially designed for Lynch-Bages with the name of the estate on the at the bottom, and it's a Grand Cru model, so it's slightly heavier than the Echo bottle, but we pay attention on reducing the weight of our bottles. So there is some discussions about that, with some thoughts internally. So we try to for as you say, for savings of energy, and also lighter bottles for shipping. It's always better to have lighter bottles. And as for the corks, we use natural corks. We use you can buy different quality corks, and I've been told when I started in the business, you never bargain with a cork supplier, because you will get the delivery of what you paid for, and it's such an critical point, for the conservation of our wines, for the aging of our wines, that you can't be cheap on corks. So we pay the good quality corks, but we also experiment on. We have experimented on screw caps for white wines, and we've also experimented on technical corks that are made by cork suppliers that guarantee no TCA, and we've moved to technical corks for the Blanc Lynch-Bages. But the oxidation rate with those technical corks is different from the ones from natural corks. So we're not so sure about the impact on red.
Slower oxidation, or
slower.
Yeah.
Which for the white, actually, for the white is a good thing. For the red, we're not so sure yet. Some neighbors have already moved to that closure system. We're keeping an eye on it. We're doing some experiments, but as long as we can afford to pay the top quality corks for our reds, we continue that way.
Good. So 2020 then, Château Lynch-Bages.
Cheers to you. I wish I had a glass with me, but
so
I'll drink. Yeah. So, 2020, very forward vintage, a warm year. I remember very well the picking conditions, because we were coming out of the first lockdown, and it was just before the second lockdown. It was an early harvest. We had a really good summer warm summer that helped to achieve that perfect phenolic ripeness. It was a small crop, rather small crop, but the sanitary conditions were optimal, and we harvested really beautiful grapes.
So
We
you consider
yeah.
this, the 2020, to be a classic?
It's yes, yes. We had
Vineyard.
in the last 10 years we had a good run with some very good vintage.
Mm.
I guess that's one of the positive impact of climate change. Uh, we've seen more regularity and more consistency in some years. We had 16. We can even start with 15. 15 was top vintage. 16 was great vintage.
Mhm.
18, 19, 20, 22. Those are really the so-called vintage of the century. But we've produced quite a few in the last 10 years.
I know, I remember
We
every year.
used to produce those vintages twice every 10 years.
I know. There
And
was
now
a
in
run
10
of them,
years,
there wasn't there?
we've seen quite a few, which is great. I mean,
Yeah, amazing.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But with climate change comes some negative impacts that can't be left aside. I mean, we see more. Um, we see earlier bud burst because of the warmer winters. So that comes with the risk of frost
Yeah.
in April, and we've seen big frost, including one in 2017. We're seeing also decrease in yields over the years. I think we've lost 20% in average in the last 15 years. So there are some challenges that we have to adapt to. But this 2020 was really a successful year. It's the first one in our new facility, the new winery. I remember that we had to hire all our pickers and to test them for COVID, and hope that they would not get COVID during harvest, because if any picker had a COVID in one of our team, we have 3 teams, we were supposed to stop the whole team, which would have been a disaster. You can't wait for a team to start again, and so we decided to test them before signing their contract, and we never tested them again after. And we went on full throttle
That was it.
to harvest.
Yeah.
Social distancing, equipping everybody with masks. But the atmosphere was good. People were happy to be working outside. Weather was great. Everybody
I
was
think
coming out. Yeah.
I was going to say that the risk, I suppose, of, because they were outside, the risk was much less of catching or spreading, COVID. A question then, what is the earliest vintage of Lynch-Bages that is drinking well, and in what way does it change over time?
It's a hard question. It depends. Everybody has a different taste. Some people like bold wines, young wines, and drink them young, like like a 2020, even though that's a wine for the long haul. Some people would enjoy to drink them rather young, and that's fine. Some prefer lighter vintages. Right now, the ones that are showing, I think, in the intermediary vintages, which are ready to drink, I think you have the choice between 2021, which is showing nice right now. 2017, I have a lot of pleasure in drinking the 2017. And those are rather young vintages of Lynch-Bages, but mature right now. Then, of course, you can go for you can also go for more bigger years like the 2020. It depends how young you drink your how young you like your bottles, In my family, we tend to like them. We drink our wines with a bit of age. Lynch-Bages with, depending on the vintage, with at least 5 to 8 years, and if it's top vintage, sometimes needs more to develop and open. You know, for instance, the 2010 is a vintage that was tight for a very long time, and now it's turning around and is showing beautiful right now. But
And the older vintages just seem, as the wine ages, it seems to gain complexity.
it gains, of course, it gains
flavor,
complexity. You know,
and
flavors evolve.
it
You,
just
you-
it changes so much really as it ages.
yeah. Mhm.
Obviously, every vintage is different.
Yeah.
Someone is asking if you irrigate.
No, no, no. It's forbidden in Bordeaux. Forbidden. You will lose the appellation, but it's not needed. So you know, we have a very oceanic climate, and I think that's one of the chance of Bordeaux, is that because of our proximity to the ocean, you know, we have enough rain, and the impact of global warming is different for us than it is in some other regions where you have a more continental climate. I'm also producing wine in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, as you know, Lynne, Domaine des Sénéchaux. And I can
Which we
see,
sell.
and I can see the impact of climate change in Châteauneuf. There is more mortality in the vineyard. There is a need for irrigation in Châteauneuf that now people are using irrigation in some part of Châteauneuf. And so you can see the changes regarding this aspect. But for Bordeaux, right now, there's no need of irrigation. We have enough. We have in average we have 800 to 900 millimeters of rain per year. And actually, in the last 18 months, we had 1,500 millimeters of rain. So we didn't lack any moisture at all.
That's actually a bit more than Dublin, believe it or not.
Yes, it's probably more rainy than in Dublin. Yeah, but we get a bit more sun too.
Absolutely, and that's the critical difference when you're
Yeah.
ripening grapes. So time for one more question, because I'm conscious you need to head off. What type of fermentation method is used in the cellar, and does it vary between the two wines?
No, exactly same methods for the two wines.
Okay.
I mean, we adapt the extraction and maceration to the potential of the tannins and to the characteristic of each grapes. But we work in the same way for Lynch-Bages and Eco. The difference between the two is just blending decisions at the end. You know, it depends on what we taste. But we conduct fermentation very quickly after destemming the grapes and putting the berries in the tanks. Fermentation lasts for a week, maceration altogether 3 weeks. And we do a lot of pumping overs to extract all the polyphenols and all the tannins. And that's one of the characteristic of Lynch-Bages is the extraction process that makes the wine so opulent. And Lynch-Bages is a very hedonistic style of Pauillac, I think. It's a wine that is quite impressive when young, but gains also in complexity with aging. And
Okay.
hopefully people like it.
I think we do like it, there's no question. So, Jean-Charles, thanks so much. I think the winning question is the question about the bottle weights, which is an interesting and very topical question in terms of climate change and in terms of environmental issues. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Thank you to the Brian's team behind the scenes. We will get, if you could just give your details, I think it was David that asked about bottles. We'll get a bottle off to you for your questions. Thanks everyone for attending. Thank you for the questions. Jean-Charles, absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Lynne.
I think we could have talked again for an hour. Really appreciate it.
We'll do it again.
You'll do it again. Exactly. Thanks so much. Hopefully in person next time.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Kevin.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Take care.